Okay, next is prestige classes. Now there is a number presented here. I'm going to talk about two of them, which I particularly stuck out for me. First is the Master Chemist, and this is aimed at the Alchemist base class that they've presented with you. And you get to be a significantly better version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, to the extent that you actually have two separate personalities. You're literally splitting your character's personality in two, and the interesting thing is that you're not allowed to have the same alignment. So the two different characters are literally two different characters. They have to be within one step of each other as far as alignment, I believe. But it's a nice idea that when you're ordinary, everyday, Joe the alchemist, you're one person, and then you turn on your mutagen's class ability, you become the Dr. and Jekyll type character, you become Mr. Hyde, and you are a different person with a different personality, a different, this is not necessarily the same history, you might have different goals, and I thought that was really interesting. And now obviously it's aimed at a particular kind of player. I can't imagine everyone willing to take that role-playing challenge on. Nice concept. The other was that stuck out for me was the Nature Warden, which is very much aimed at the Druid and Rangers, because this is all about improving your animal companion and becoming more nature-based warrior. And I think they did a very nice job of handling that here. Because basically it's a better Ranger or Druid in the sense that you're enhancing the nature skills that your character class has. And I love animal companions. I always have. They were cool. I love when they introduced them officially and gave them a real structure in 3.5, or 3rd edition, I should say. Next section, magic items. Obviously, they're breaking this down into the same categories as the classic. For example, we have boneless leather, and this is leather armor that makes you bendy. So you're better at getting out of escapes, like grapples, and you're literally, your body can morph and warp while wearing it. That was weird, but kind of interesting. The Beast Strike Club, which is really aimed at druids. It is a club with an animal theme, which can actually transform itself into a natural attack. So you can turn it into a claw, or you can turn it into, a stinger. Different kinds of things like that. So piercing or slashing, which gives your character a number of options, animal themed. I like that. I like the flavor. The Tangle Bolts, which are crossbow bolts that when they hit a target, they damage them, but then they turn into a Tanglefoot bag. Perfect. Talk about locking somebody down. Aim that at a spellcaster, boom, suddenly they're, if not neutralized, but severely penalized. Then we have, for example, the Ring of Medical Devices, which is giving you a bonus +5 to disable device and craft trap checks, even if you don't have these skills. So you can still use the skills while wearing this ring, even if you don't have them. That's very good, and of course, if you're a rogue and you're trap base or disable device base, what rogue doesn't want this ring? There's a bunch of meta magic rods in here, all of which are tied to the meta magic feats that were introduced in this book. So no surprise there, because they didn't exist in previous editions. The Apple of Eternal Sleep, absolute Sleeping Beauty meets D&D. You get someone to eat this thing, they're going to Sleepy Land forever. You're going to need to use a wish or a miracle, or have them kissed by someone of royal blood. Cauldron of Flying, great Celtic theme here, folks. They have a number of cauldron magic items because of the witch class, which has always been tied to the cauldron. Heck, even I own a cauldron. It's in my library. And the Ioun Torch, which is reusing a burnt-out Ioun stone. There's a little magic items that orbit around your head and grant you bonuses normally. Well, once they're burned out, they don't stop orbiting. They're just burned out. Well, you cast an eternal flame on them, and now it becomes an orbiting torch. Very handy. I thought that was quite clever, and a nice reuse of a resource that your characters may have had, got burned out, and now they can, I know this is not an incredibly original idea. I can remember people talking about this kind of thing back in first edition, but it's nice to see it in the official book. Sniper goggles, which allow your sneak attack damage at any range increment. So now you're not limited to 30 feet, which is good if you have a rogue who is skilled at a short bow, because rogues are proficient in them. So now you can be hitting people at 100 feet away if you want with your sneak attack damage, which is much more likely that people are not going to know where you are when you hit them. Nice item. Then they have a section of cursed items, of course. One of them was the buffoon sword, which makes you look silly. It turns you into this slapstick Mr. Bean kind of a character when you're using it, which made me smile. The Ring of Truth, you put the ring on, you think it's one kind of magic item, then all of a sudden you can't lie. I know certain characters that would have cut their own hand off if they'd had this ring, because the idea of not being able to lie was so anathema to them. Now, there are also a section of minor and major artifacts, and I thought a couple were interesting. I haven't used artifacts of any real variety since first edition, so having artifacts in the game, I guess, is useful, particularly if you want to have a campaign focus, but to me, they're not really required. You know what I mean? The base magic items have always been flavor enough, I guess. And we have some new rules. And these are new to the Pathfinder core system, never been introduced before. Though not necessarily new to anyone who's been doing some experienced GM has probably had these ideas in the past. The first were new combat maneuvers. Now, for example, dirty tricks. This is the classic distraction type dirty tricks in combat. The kicking sand in someone's face, throwing a cloak, and, that kind of thing, to get them, to get an advantage over them. And these are using the combat defense abilities and the combat maneuver abilities from the core Pathfinder rules. We also have drag, and this is the ability to basically grab and pull someone without hurting them from point A to point B. I think it's interesting. I'm glad they put it in. I don't know if I've ever wanted to do that before. Now, maybe now that the option is available, I'll think of it. But I find it interesting that someone felt this had to be put into the game, because that means that somebody did it repeatedly enough in their campaign to think, hey, this needs to be a rule. I would love to be in that campaign to see why people are being dragged around. Might be fun. Another is steal. Ability to remove an item from someone's possession on their body, not in their hands. This is not for stealing items in their hands. In combat. So, there's the mage over there's got a wand tucked in his belt. Boop! That kind of thing. Cool. I like that idea. Next we have a section on hero points. Action points. I am not a fan of action points. I have never liked them, ever. For two reasons. One is a minor reason. One, because I think it takes some narrative control away from the game master. This is a minor quibble. You're God. If someone in the group does something that you don't like, you can work around it. But the other reason is, as a player, I don't know when to spend them. Literally. I know I've got this pool of points in my hand, and sometimes you actually use tokens, you can actually hold them in your hand. I don't know when to use them. It's a resource that I'm afraid to use, because if I spend them in the wrong spot, I've screwed myself down the line. And so that indecision means I never spend them. So I end up in a situation where the game defaults to this concept. I'm never taking advantage of this concept because I never know when to use it. Now, I don't have a problem with people who, in the standard Pathfinder game, that use characteristics like a domain power or purchasing feats that allow people to reroll things, because you're opting in. You want the ability to tinker with chance and fate, as opposed to the hero point, which is the default concept that everyone is going to be tinkering with chance and fate. And if you don't, then you are at a disadvantage. So I prefer the opt-in concept. So hero points are not something I'm really all that into, and there are supporting rules for this, like for feats that enhance your hero point allotments and things like that. And the last is a section on traits. Now the traits are minor characteristics. You'd get 2, and each is worth essentially half a feat. And there are basic ones. For example, they break down to combat, faith, magic, and social. Now each of these essentially, for example, is you get a +1 to 2 different skills, and one of them becomes a class skill for you. Or you get a +2 to some ability, but you only can use it so many times a day. Each of them is very similar to that, but in each is equivalent to the level of the power level of half a feat. I like these. I think it gives people the ability to tailor their characters a little bit more the way they want. And again, I like options. They also have some campaign ones, which, for example, you might know a guy in town. Because you know this guy in town, he gives you get a bonus to a skill because he has inside information, or he's willing to sell you poison, but he won't sell anybody else poison because you're not on his contact list, kind of thing. That's going to be very much specific to each campaign. They have some racial ones, which again are worth half a feat. If you're a certain kind of dwarf, you have this kind of a bonus. If you're a certain kind of an elf, you have a different kind of bonus. And so, again, more options. They also have regional feats, which is mostly about environmental things coming from different areas, like you're from a certain city or you're from the mountains. And then you have a section on religious traits, which again are going to be themed about different kinds of religions. And are you a pure ecclesiastical? Are you a combat cleric? That kind of thing. And again, they're each is worth a half feat. I like these. I think they're good. It's not the first time I've seen this idea introduced to a game. I liked it the first time I saw it, and I like it now. So I was glad to see this section in there. So, bottom line, is the Advanced Player's Guide worth your time and gaming dollar? And I say yes. In fact, I would say that if you were to only buy 3 Pathfinder books, get the core rules, get the bestiary, and get the Advanced Player's Guide. The Game Mastery Guide is good if you are a starting GM, but I don't think it's nearly as useful to you as the Advanced Player's Guide. This thing is just full of win from beginning to end. And even though there are parts that didn't thrill me, like the Cavalier and some of the Bard abilities and the hero points, I know there are people out there that are going to eat those things up. There's just so much in here for people who love the Pathfinder core rules, who are 3.5 fans and are looking for new options. I even like the naming nomenclature they use here for the classes they introduced. One word, just like the core rules: Wizard, Ranger, Oracle, Cavalier, Summoner. I like the way they did that. So I recommend this. I think you should own it. Go get a copy. Thanks for listening.